The Butte de Warlencourt is an ancient burial mound off the Albert-Bapaume road, northeast of Les Sars in the Somme département of northern France. It is located on the territory of the commune of Warlencourt-Eaucourt and slightly north of a minor road to Gueudecourt and Eaucourt. The Germans constructed deep dugouts throughout the butte and surrounded it by several belts of barbed wire, making it a formidable defensive position in advance of Gallwitz Riegel. After the Battle of Flers, Courcelette, the view from the butte dominated the new British front line and was used by the Germans for artillery observation. During the Battle of La Transloy, part of the Battle of the Somme, the Butte de Warlencourt was the subject of several attacks by the British Fourth Army, which were costly failures. Attacks in November also failed. The 2nd Australian Division occupied the butte on the 24th of February 1917. During the German retirements made on the Somme front, preparatory to Operation Alberic, the retreat to the Hindenburg Line, the Butte de Warlencourt was recaptured by the German Second Army on the 24th of March 1918, during the retreat of the 2nd Division in Operation Michael, the German Spring Offensive. The butte was recaptured for the last time on the 26th of August by the 21st Division, during the Second Battle of Bapaume. In 1990, the site was purchased for preservation by the Western Front Association. Background: 1914. On the 25th of September, during the race to the sea, a French attack north of the Somme against the 2nd Bavarian Corps forced a hurried withdrawal. As more Bavarian units arrived in the north, the 3rd Bavarian Division advanced along the north bank of the Somme, through Bouchard Veins, La Forest and Hardecourt until held up at Maricourt. The 4th Bavarian Division further to the north, defeated the French territorials and then attacked westwards in the vicinity of Gueudecourt, towards Albert, through Salé, Combles, Guillemont and Montauban. The 2nd Bavarian Corps and 14th Reserve Corps pushed back a French territorial division from the area around Bapaume and advanced towards Bray-sur-Somme and Albert, as part of an offensive down the Somme Valley to reach the sea. The German offensive was confronted north of the Somme by the Northern Corps of the French Second Army east of Albert. The 14th Reserve Corps attacked on the 28th of September along the Roman road from Bapaume to Albert and Amiens, intending to reach the Ancre and then continue westwards along the Somme Valley. The 28th Reserve Division advanced close to Fricourt against scattered resistance from French infantry and cavalry. On the 21st of July, 3 Squadron Royal Flying Corps discovered new German defences from Le Transloy to Warlencourt and more trenches between Eaucourt-l'Abbé and Flers, west of the butte. On the 22nd of August, a dogfight between 11 Squadron and about 20 German fighters took place above the butte and 3 Roland D.I. aircraft were shot down. On the 4th of October, the 47th Division occupied Flers' support unopposed and after nightfall on the 5th of October, advanced to occupy a ruined mill northwest of Eaucourt. The capture of Eaucourt enabled the British to move field artillery over the Highwood Ridge into range in a valley beyond the Starfish, where they could support attacks on the butte. Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment 16 remained in the line near Eaucourt and suffered many casualties. By the 5th of October, the commander of I Battalion reported that the battlefield conditions were extraordinary. Morale was low because of cold rations and constant artillery fire, some of which came from German artillery. A large number of casualties and the inability to bury dead, which were strewn around the trenches, sapped morale further. The cold, rainy weather, poor food and lack of hygiene caused a big increase in non-battle casualties, with up to 1 1/3 of the troops contracting diarrhea. No fresh troops were available to rest the garrison, despite constant appeals from the commanders. Prelude German defensive preparations. The Butte was a mound about 50 to 60 feet high, on a slope near the Gerd trenches. In the Franco-Prussian War the mound had been tunneled, and during the Battle of the Somme the Germans fortified the Butte with machine gun posts, and encircled by many bets of barbed wire. For the mound, Pozières to the southwest, Le Barque and Bapaume to the northeast were easily visible. Many German artillery positions had been established on the ground east of the Butte. German artillery positions commanded the area around Martin, where the British had to move much of their artillery, which increased the accuracy of German counter-battle fire. British offensive preparations. The 47th Division captured the nearby farmstead of Eaucourt-l'Abbé from. On the 4th of October, the 140th Brigade took over the line from the 141st Brigade in preparation for another general attack. Next day the 1/6th London Regiment occupied an old mill 500 yards west of Eaucourt-l'Abbé. The attack by 3rd Corps was to begin at 1:45 p.m. on the 7th of October against the Gerd trenches, which ran northwest to southeast from Gueudecourt to Warlencourt and past the Butte. The 47th Division was to attack in the center, with the 41st Division on the right and the 23rd Division on the left flank. The Germans had dug a new trench across the 47th Division front, over the high ground north of Eaucourt-l'Abbé, westwards into the valley. Diagonal Trench was the first objective and was to be taken by the 1/8th London. Then the final objective at Gerd Trench and the Butte was to be captured by the 1/15th and 1/7th London, with the 1/6th London in support. On the 9th of October, the 26th Brigade relieved the 140th and 142nd Brigades. Battle. The 7th of October the first objective was set at Nag Trench, which ran across the east slope of a depression running north to Warlencourt. The 6th Bavarian Reserve Division held the area with the 3 Battalion, Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment 16. In the center the objective was 500 yards distant, halfway to the Butte. On the right the 1/8th London was stopped by massed machine gun fire, as were the 1/15th London and the 1/7th London, which had been intended to leapfrog through to the final objective. In 1922, the 47th Division historian Howe, from across the valley the enemy had magnificent observation of the ground leading to our objective, and made full use of it. Not a man turned back, and some got right up under the Butte, but they were not seen again. The attackers came under small arms fire from Diagonal Trench, but the 1/15th London and 1/8th London got forward on the right and dug in, along a sunken road leading northeast from Eaucourt-l'Abbé to Le Barque. A few outposts were established near the Le Barque road, and on the right flank, touch was gained with the 41st Division. To the left, companies of the 1/8th London, followed by the 1/7th London, advanced down the slope forward of the mill and were fired on from Diagonal Trench and by artillery and machine gun fire sighted in depth, to aim crossfire along the western slopes up to the Butte and high ground to the south. For the far side of the valley, the ground leading to the British objectives was easily observed. Some of the attackers reached the Butte and disappeared, and several local counter-attacks were made by Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment 16. Parties dug in where they could, and several posts were pushed out from the mill to maintain contact with the 23rd Division, which had advanced along the main road and captured La Sars. The 23rd Division sent patrols which gained a view of the Butte and the vicinity at 3:40 p. a.m., the patrols reported that no Germans could be seen. The 140th Brigade lost many casualties and were relieved on the left flank by the 142nd Brigade, but the 1/6th London in the advanced posts had to wait until the 142nd Brigade attacked the next day. On the 8th of October, a post was spotted halfway up the road towards the Butte by the crew of a reconnaissance aircraft. The 142nd Brigade attacked Diagonal Trench again, with the 121st of Stone London and the 122nd London, who crawled forward to rush the German garrison as soon as a 1-minute hurricane bombardment lifted at 9:00 p.m. The 121st of Stone London advanced until about 200 yards short of Diagonal Trench with no losses. Then massed machine gun fire began and inflicted many casualties, and few troops reached the trench. On the left flank, 3 companies of the 122nd London reached Diagonal Trench against slight opposition, but enfilade fire from the right flank made the trench untenable once dawn broke. The survivors managed to dig advanced posts up to 100 yards short of the objective and at the Eaucourt-l'Abbé Warlencourt road. Touch was gained with the 23rd Division on the left. The 47th and 23rd Divisions were relieved by the 9th and 15th Divisions from 8 to 11 October, preparatory to another attack. The 12th of October, the 9th Division took over from the 47th Division on the eve of the attack. Flers asked for a 48-hour postponement, but was overruled. RFC aircraft tried to reconnoiter the area to establish the position of any new German trenches, but the light was too poor. By the 12th of October, the Bavarian companies had been reduced to about 35 men each, with rifles and 18 machine guns to defend an area of 1,000 by 1,500 meters. The divisional objectives were Snag Trench and the Butte, including the tail, a trench running back from Snag Trench to the Butte, and the Pimple, a mound at the west end of Snag Trench. On the left flank, the 15th Division had been sapping forward was to support the attack by firing on the final objective. No. 4 Special Company preparing to lay a smoke screen on Little Wood and the Butte. On the right flank, the 7th Seaforth Highlanders of the 26th Brigade were met by machine gun fire as soon as it advanced, and was also hit by the British heavy artillery, which fired short and missed Snag Trench. The 10th Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders moved forward as reinforcements, but only about 200 yards were gained when the troops consolidated during the night. On the left flank, the 2nd Regiment of the South African Brigade, supported by the 4th Regiment, was held up by long-range machine gun fire and lost direction from the smoke screen which drifted from the Butte. The remnants dug in halfway to Snag Trench behind some advanced parties, who were ordered to retire during the morning of the 13th of October. Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment 16 was relieved by Infantry Regiment 104 on the 13th of October. The defenders managed to recapture a British foothold in the 7th Company zone and were then relieved by Reserve Infantry Regiment 181. Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment 16 had lost 1,177 casualties in 10 days and had only 350 infantrymen left fit to fight. The 18th of October. On the 17th of October, 2 companies of Infantry Regiment 104 counter-attacked and were confronted by a gigantic Iron Dragon, which fired on German positions with machine guns and light guns. Most of the 9th Company was annihilated before the tank retired. The capture of the Butte by the 9th Division was postponed, and Snag Trench was made the objective of an attack at 3:40 a.m. on the 18th of October. On the right flank an attack was to be made by the 30th Division. The 26th Brigade was to attack with a battalion in line. The 4 companies moving on platoon fronts with a supporting company and a machine gun company. Stokes mortars were to add to the bombardment of the German front line. On the left flank, the South African Brigade was to attack with the 1st Regiment, with 3 companies in line, also on platoon fronts, 1 company in support and 1 in reserve. The weather broke again and the attack took place in a deluge. On the right, the battalion advanced close to the creeping barrage and rushed Snag Trench as the standing barrage lifted, the garrison running back to the Gerd trenches. A counter-attack began after 15 minutes and bombed back into the trench on the right and were repulsed soon after. On the left, the South African left flank was repulsed and contact was lost with the right flank units until 9:30 a.m., when a Lewis gun crew made contact with the 26th Brigade Battalion, which had also met troops of the 30th Division. In the afternoon, a party of German troops were seen massing for a counter-attack and were dispersed by artillery and small arms fire. At 5:30 p.m., a counter-attack on the left was also repulsed. During the night a pioneer company arrived and dug a communication trench back to the old front line. The Lewis gun team was the only South African party to reach the objective. The center and right-hand companies disappeared. Apart from the Lewis gunners and a few wounded, it was thought that the South Africans overran Snag Trench, which was unrecognizable, and were cut down by the machine guns at the Butte. A few stragglers returned later in the day with 19 prisoners. The left flank company was stopped by uncut wire and then caught by machine gun fire, which inflicted many casualties, the remaining troops retiring to the British front line. Flers ordered another attack for 5:45 p.m., and for the main German strongpoint the nose to be bombarded, before the South Africans captured it and formed a trench block 500 yards up Tail Trench. The rainstorm had turned the ground into a sea of mud so deep that moving 1,000 yards took 4 hours. Her company was to attack from the Pimple and one was to get into Snag Trench east of the nose and attack westwards. The attack from the Pimple entered a hollow, which was full of German machine gun nests which stopped the advance. The South African party got into Snag Trench and advanced to within 25 yards of the nose and were then repulsed by the fire of 3 machine guns, reoccupying Snag Trench a few hours later. The 5th of November, the 50th Division relieved the 9th Division from 24-25 October, in rain which had begun on the 23rd of October and stopped around 3 o'clock p.m. The next day. The division took over the line east and southeast of Les Sars, in the angle of the Warlencourt-Eaucourt and Martinpuich-le-Bac roads. The front line in Snag Trench was irregular and isolated posts on the left flank were joined to make a continuous line. The German front line was still in Gerd Trench and Gerd's support trench behind the Butte. A British attack on the 26th of October was postponed for 2 days and then postponed until the 30th of October, as preparations continued and trenches were repaired. Swampy conditions in no man's land were so bad that no attack could take place until the ground dried. On the 28th of October, the ground had recovered slightly and the attack was scheduled for the 1st of November, but then another downpour began in the night, followed by warmer weather, rain and gales from 30-31 October, and the attack was again delayed, eventually being set for 9:10 a.m. on the 5th of November. The 149th Brigade and the 150th Brigade holding the line had become so exhausted that the 151st Brigade was moved up from reserve for the attack. The 151st Brigade was to attack Gueude Trench and Gueude's support trench, with the 1/8, 1, 6th and 1, 9th Battalions Durham Light Infantry, the 1, 4th and 1, 6th Battalions Northumberland Fusiliers were attached from the 149th Brigade in support. The DLI battalions were to assemble in snag and snag support trenches, Maxwell Trench and Tail Trench, as the 1, 6th and 1/8 DLI took the Gueude trenches. The 1, 9th DLI was to capture the Butte and the adjacent quarry, and the Northumberland battalions were to support the attack from the flanks, and the 1, 5th Border Regiment was to stay in reserve in Prue and Starfish trenches. Parts of the divisional machine gun and trench mortar companies were to accompany the attack, and a creeping barrage was to begin 200 yards in front of the jumping-off line. Rain and high winds began again on night of 4/5 November, and the attacking infantry floundered in mud, which was thigh-deep in places, as they advanced to the jumping-off points, and several men drowned. The rain abated towards dawn, with the prospect of a fine cold day, but the effect of the storm and a German counter-bombardment could be seen. At 0 hour the creeping bombardment began, and infantry crawled out of their trenches, the first men pulling the following troops over the parapet. The British began to follow the creeping barrage. A moderate German counter-barrage fell short of snag trench, and massed machine gun fire began from the flanks, causing many casualties as the British troops struggled through the mud at walking pace. The remaining men of the 1/8 DLI got close to Butte Trench, where they were also hit by British artillery and Stokes mortar fire, and then retired to Snag Trench, leaving wounded and stragglers in shell holes. On the right flank, a supporting Australian attack failed when the Australian artillery barrage fell behind the front line, and a machine gun barrage was so inaccurate that bullets hit the DLI trenches. In the centre, the 1/6 DLI was held up on the right, and on the left managed to overrun Gueude Trench and form a strong point. The attack of the 1/9 DLI on the left flank took the quarry, overran the Butte, and established a machine gun position, advanced to Gueude Trench, and dug in on the Albert-Bapaume road. By noon, the 1/6 DLI were held up in Maxwell Trench, and the 1/9 DLI had consolidated at the quarry, Gueude Trench, Gueude Support Trench, and Butte Alley. At 3 o'clock p.m., German counter-attacks began on the Gueude trenches, and fighting in the Butte continued for a strong point on the north side. By 3 o'clock p.m., the British had been forced back from Gueude Trench, and by 7:15 p.m., the Germans had advanced to Butte Alley, and reinforcements were requested to recapture Gueude Trench. At 12:20 a.m., the 1/9 and 1/6 DLI were driven back to Maxwell Trench by converging attacks from the flanks and a frontal attack, which also overran the Butte, where the German garrison emerged and joined in the counter-attack. German troops managed to get behind the quarry, and by 1 o'clock p.m. on the 6th of November the British were back to the start line in Snag, Maxwell and Tail Trench. Another attack was ordered but cancelled later. The attacking battalions lost 967 men, and other casualties made a total of c. 1,000 losses. RFC aircraft flew in support of the 4th Army attacks. Despite high winds, and a contact patrol crew flew for 3 3/4 hours to observe the attack on the Butte, reporting the capture and then the loss of the Butte to German counterattacks. On the 5th of November, the 1st Guard Reserve Division had been relieving the 24th Division, and Infantry Regiment 179 recorded the that the British swarmed over the Butte and reached the Warlencourt trench. During the battle, German artillery also managed to fire on both sides, and parts of I Battalion, Infantry Regiment 179, I Battalion, Infantry Regiment 139 and I Battalion, Guard Reserve Regiment 1 conducted the converging attack at 10:50 p.m. On the British right flank, Guard Grenadier Regiment 5 in Guard Reserve Regiment 93 of the 4th Guard Division engaged the British. Early on the 6th of November, 73 soldiers stranded in no man's land surrendered to Infantry Regiment 179.